Is Donald Trump backtracking on abortion? Is he flip flopping? And how are single issue voters supposed to take it when our candidates don't take the pro life position that we would rather them take? Welcome to a special edition of Encounter Today, where we're taken over by Encounter News. And we're going to have an amazing conversation here talking about President Trump's recent comments on the campaign trail to a reporter, where he talks about an abortion ban that's coming up in Florida. We're going to have an all-star panel with us here today. In addition to that, I was recently called out by a local pastor, an international minister and a local pastor. Jonathan Shuttlesworth called me out on his program, and he had some choice words to say about yours truly. I'm going to be responding to him and much, much more. But first, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from all across the country and around the world? And how important is the pro-life position for you as a conservative? You know, it used to be that conservatives could easily be single-issue voters. What does that mean for us today? Are there issues that are more important? Should we resign to voting for the lesser of two evils? Should we be afraid of criticizing the current administration and any positions it takes for fear of it losing the election? How are we going to process all of this? Well, Donald Trump, who is no stranger to saying outrageous and confrontational things, he recently had this to say on the campaign trail. As we're looking at your comments, as you write down where you're watching from, let's take a look at a quick clip of what Donald Trump just said recently.
Well, everyone does.
I
think
overturned
everyone
Roe,
does, yeah.
and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path.
Very interesting. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, and he's actually telling the truth on that issue. How are we to process this as believers? How are we to look at this candidate among other candidates? Evan, who do we have joining with us online today, just in the comments?
Yeah, it's great to see Mitch traveling to Los Angeles here.
Watch out.
Yeah, we got Patty Ball. Is excited to be listening in from North Carolina. Ansel from South Africa. We've got Tina from Dallas, Texas. One Body in Christ, always good to see you, brother, from the UK. We got James from Clayton. I believe that's, oh man, the state just left me. NM. I homeschooled, okay? I'm kidding, y'all. I'm kidding.
This is an important issue, what we're going to be talking about here, because especially when we get to the Jonathan Shuttlesworth portion of it, because there's this conversation about how extreme should we be on abortion until it hurts our position politically and our ability to win elections. And is there a difference between the candidate and the campaign and the party and the platform, and how we should hold them accountable? These are all things that we need to be looking at. Flame of the Spirit says, I think we should look at Donald Trump as being a politician. They inevitably flip-flop on certain issues to maintain power, in my opinion. Well, that's a pretty good opinion. I would say that's a factual statement. And we want to get your comments, questions. If you have a question, make sure you type it in the comments with 4 question marks so that Evan can easily mark that and identify that, and we'll possibly get to it with our all-star panel. First of all, joining us is the deputy editor of Encounter News and an amazing resource for subjects just like this. Matea Murta, it's so good to have you on Encounter today.
Thank you for having me on. It's wonderful to be back, especially to discuss this issue.
This is one that's near and dear to your heart because you've got such a depth of experience. Just tell us a little bit about your involvement in pro-life issues on a global scale.
Of course. Well, I originally started up in Canada working for a parliamentarian, and the major issue that I was involved in with all stakeholders was on the life issue from conception to natural death. And that led me straight to combating the United Nations, where I'm at today. and fighting to protect life and the family. And so that's where I'm at currently, whether it's the abortion issue, whether it's protecting the definition of the family, whether it's ensuring that euthanasia doesn't creep into every single nation on the planet, which it seems to be taking a hold of in many nations, but also there's many nations fighting against all of these notorious things. So that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm currently doing, and also bringing that knowledge to inform viewers and readers over at Encounter News.
EncounterNews.com has been blowing up entirely because of you and because of the research, the investigative journalism that you do over there. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't visit Encounter News every day, multiple times a day, because there's multiple articles being posted every day to keep you up to date on end-time news that matters to you. And you have actually been kind of building this wealth of resources in connecting with contributing authors who are contributing on Encounter News with some amazing resources to make sure believers are informed and edified. So you're not just discouraged, but you're encouraged about what's happening and how you as a believer can make a difference. And I'm so excited about this today. You've brought on a dear friend, and I want you to introduce our next guest on the panel today.
Well, thank you. Yes, a dear friend and an incredible man of God. There's certain people you hear and they capture your attention and you grip onto every word they say, and that is this man. He is the National Director of Priests for Life. He is an incredible wealth of knowledge. He has informed me on multiple issues, and it's not just surface talking points that he brings. He brings wisdom. And so I would like to introduce to you all Father Frank Pavone. Welcome, sir, to the program.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's great to be with you. And I'm excited about Encounter News, by the way. Matea, you told me about it right from the very beginning, and I'm happy to be part of it here today and in other ways.
Well, we're so thankful to have you here with us to kind of cut through the clutter of all this. But first, ladies and gentlemen, before we dive into all the meat of everything, if you want to confront a woke culture, you've got to be awake. And the only way to really wake up is with some good coffee. You need to go get a hold of Encounter Coffee, encountercoffee.com. We have the Wigglesworth blend, and we have Azusa Street Mornings. Soon to come, the decaf blend, which will be the Calvin blend because it has a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. We'll talk about that later. It'll be a lot of fun. But go to encountercoffee.com. Stop supporting woke companies. Get your coffee through a Holy Ghost company like encountercoffee.com. So, Father Frank Pavone, let's dive into this subject matter. First of all, to give our audience a little bit of history concerning the depth of your knowledge and experience, as Matea did, tell us a little bit about what you do in the pro-life front.
Well, I got involved in the pro-life movement in 1976. I grew up in New York, and I became a Catholic priest. And then in 1993, after having served in a church in New York City, I sought and received permission to dedicate my life and ministry entirely to fighting abortion and saving the unborn. I received that permission. So since 1993, I've been the full-time national director of this group called Priests for Life, which, contrary to the way it sounds, is not just for priests, it's not just for Catholics, it's for anyone who wants to bring an end to abortion. And we do a lot of multifaceted work around the United States and around the world. Part of that work is politics. This issue of abortion got me heavily involved in politics. So besides the educational work, publishing, broadcasting, and speaking that our team does, we help elect pro-life candidates. We help to work with them to, once they're elected, to pass pro-life legislation. We work in battles in the courts to uphold that pro-life legislation. And we've been doing this, like I say, I've been doing it full time for the last 31 years, able to focus on this one issue of abortion, morning, noon, and night. And I'll tell you, Today I have just as much joy and eagerness in doing this work as I did on day one.
Wow. Well, to be able to glean from the depth of that experience today, we're so excited about that. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have comments for any of us, make sure you put 4 question marks in your comment to let us know that you have a question. Let's take a look, Matea, at this next clip of Trump. Right after that interview that we showed earlier, he had a few comments at his campaign rally. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
I just did an interview backstage. She was a very terrible person, but she was okay, actually. NBC fake news. It was NBC fake news. She asked me about all sorts of things. She asked me about abortion, and I handled it very nicely because you know what? That's so overplayed. We have abortion. We have the whole thing brought back into the states where it belongs. That's where everybody wanted it for years and years and years.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get to a couple clips, including a clip from Jonathan Shuttlesworth, who had some words to say about a tweet that I tweeted, and I'm going to respond to that here in a moment. But first, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding this, Matea, concerning this supposed flip-flop that the Trump administration has had on pro-life issues. Can you just kind of catch us up on what all the scuttlebutt is concerning this issue?
Of course, thank you. Yes, so there's been a lot of concerns amongst voters, American voters, on this issue because it would appear as though Trump has flip-flopped on his issue of being pro-life. And I've been one person who, from the beginning of his administration, even through his campaign, who has said he will be and he was the most pro-life president the United States has ever seen. And there's many, many reasons to justify that. He defunded Planned Parenthood through Title X. He reinstated and expanded the Mexico City policy. He withdrew funding from the United Nations Population Fund, which is essentially the population control division of the UN. He is still anti-late and full-term abortions. And I could literally go on and on and on about the litany of good things and accomplishments which this president had in his administration and still seeks to continue into a second term. Now, with that being said, after this statement he made about a Florida amendment, a pro-abortion amendment that would come in, which would remove parental rights, it would do several things, which I actually want Father Frank to discuss because he's also a resident of Florida. This is where a lot of people are now concerned, and they're calling him a flip-flopper. Now, he came out saying that he would vote in favor of it, and now he actually came out and stated that he would not vote in favor of it. And so I can understand the American voters' concerns around this, being that he is a flip-flopper. So with that being stated, Father Frank, if you would be willing to touch on this, what is in depth the Florida abortion amendment, and maybe speak to a little bit why you, as someone who is very, I think it's kind of funny, Pastor Allen, where you say, what are you involved, Father Frank, in the pro-life movement? To be honest, what is Father Frank not involved in the pro-life movement? So if you could address this issue, I would be so grateful because you bring the wealth of knowledge with it.
Yes, and I should also say, for perspective, I mean, first of all, for all these years I've been working the pro-life movement, one thing is very clear, and I know we share this with most of our viewers: not a single abortion can ever be justified, either morally or legally. Not a single abortion can ever be authorized by any government or any power anywhere on earth. So let's make sure we understand before we discuss this that we're all solid on that moral platform. Secondly, I did serve in both of President Trump's previous campaigns, and I've been helping in this one too. But on his previous campaigns, I had a formal role on his pro-life advisory coalition, and as well as on his coalition for Catholic issues. So in 2020, I was actually national co-chair of what was called Pro-Life Voices for Trump. So I've seen the campaign and the administration from the inside, been involved in lots of meetings, conversations with President Trump himself, and I just want to set that up as a little bit of background. Now, on Amendment 4, let's just put this in perspective. There are 10 states right now that have these initiatives on the ballot to amend the state constitutions. Florida, as you said, is one of them. Because we're being seen here nationally and globally, let me mention that we're also talking about Colorado. We're talking about Arizona, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New York, and South Dakota. All of these amendments, they vary slightly in wording, but the effect is the same. Listen carefully to this. They impose unrestricted abortion on the state constitutions, not just as a policy, but as a constitutional amendment, which means that if they get in, no legislature in those states, no court decision, no executive action, no agency action can limit in any way the open right to abortion. So this is as extreme as it gets. It's more extreme than Roe v. Wade, which said that there could be limits, that there could be regulations, more extreme than we've ever seen. Okay. Now, President Trump actually has been consistent on Amendment 4. Let me explain why. Notice that question. It was from NBC News, which he then rightly pointed out, NBC fake news. She asked the question the wrong way. She framed Amendment 4 the wrong way. You go back to that clip, she said to President Trump, Florida has introduced an amendment to overturn the 6-week ban on abortion. That's not why Amendment 4 was introduced. Amendment 4 is not a proposal to overturn the 6-week limit on abortion. It is, like I just explained, an amendment that would impose unlimited abortion. People might, like President Trump, feel that the 6-week limit is too early. Fine. Well, where do you want it? He has said that the 15-week limit would be reasonable. Amendment 4 would get rid of a 15-week limit. Amendment 4 would get rid of a 20-week limit. Amendment 4 would get rid of a 24-week limit. This is abortion on demand. President Trump has always said he's against late-term abortion, still says it now. So to be against late-term abortion is to be against Amendment 4. It's completely consistent.
Wow. How many of you in the comments were not aware of that? And of course, Trump is just reacting to whatever the question is and how it's phrased, which is fascinating. And I think it's important to note, someone's saying in the comments that, Evan, if you can pull up that comment from Robert Grimshaw, who says, cut the American evangelical churchianity crap. He's not running for pastor of the U.S. Really, someone from the UK, take care. Anyway, so he's getting very belligerent about this, but that's not what we're saying, actually. That's actually not what we're saying. Actually, I've said for a long, long time, Trump on paper is the most pro-abortion Republican candidate in recent history, but in actual actions, he is the most pro-life candidate in American history. And we have to look at those actions. We have to look at that. And that's what's most important. And later in the broadcast, I'm going to be drawing a distinction between the party and the person, between the candidate and the campaign and the platform of the Republican Party. We'll talk about the difference between those two things. But Mateo, what's your response to that clarity that he just brought?
Oh, I think it's very significant. I mean, the need and the necessity for people to understand the depth of policy. This is where we can't just look to the headlines and we can't just read the first 2 or 3 paragraphs or sentences of an article and think that we're well informed. We need to actually go to those people who, like Father Frank, are heavily entrenched in this fight. And we have to also do our due diligence to look at these policies ourselves, because we're going to be led astray otherwise, because everybody has a piece in this pie and everybody's going to want you to say that theirs tastes better than the other. And so you're going to need, as the people of Florida and all those other states, of every state, you need to go and look at the amendments being proposed and take a vocal and physical stance against these things. Because if we don't, we're going to let the other side per se, win on these issues.
Yeah, Brother Frank, it's interesting that we often don't want to choose the lesser of two evils. And we hate being put in that position. And it's good to hear, by the way, that Trump has been consistent on this issue for a long time. He's just simply responding to a question he doesn't have the full information on. But for people who are for a long time, guys, pro-life, it's a single issue. We're single issue voters, because you can tell what someone thinks about a whole host of issues by how they vote concerning life. Let me ask this first before I talk about the lesser of two evils. Can we still remain single-issue voters, or have things become so much more nuanced and complicated now that we're voting for free speech and other fundamental rights?
Well, you bring up an important point. Yeah, you bring up an important point, because people are always motivated by single issues to get involved in politics, to get involved. My single issue is abortion. They got me involved in this whole position we're in now. But saying that something is a single issue in the sense that it's my single biggest motivator doesn't mean I think it's the only issue. And that's especially important in this election, because as I pointed out, and I agree with the gentleman who was saying, hey, we're not electing the pastor of America. We're not electing the pastor of anything. I'm electing somebody to do the job of president of the United States. I don't need him to give pro-life speeches. I need him to sign the right legislation, veto the wrong legislation, and appoint the right judges and do the job of president. I don't ask my surgeon, I don't ask the firefighter, I don't ask my computer technician where they stand on other issues. I want to make sure they're good at their job, the job I'm paying them to do. So here's the thing about a single issue. In this election cycle, we've got to recognize the house is on fire. We as a pro-life movement, advancing our position that no abortion can ever be justified, we need freedom of speech to do that. We need freedom of assembly. We need our pro-life people out there advocating on the streets of America and at the abortion clinics, instead of sitting in jail where the Biden-Harris administration has put them. I know those people. I've known those people for 30 years. They're in prison now, not for having done any violence. And by the way, President Trump in his speeches has been mentioning that. And he says, when I get in, I'm going to get those pro-life people out of prison. So it's not just the right to life that's under attack. That is the fundamental issue. It's the core of every issue, because an issue is not an issue if it doesn't impact human life. But we have to see more than ever that President Trump is defending the tools we need to make America pro-life. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. All we need our Constitution. We need free and fair elections. Friends, the Democrats want to destroy all these things. They are destroying all these things. And so when the house is on fire, you got to have a firefighter who's going to preserve the essentials, the tools you need to work on this in the months and years to come.
Wow. Yeah. Mateo, what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. It's the mechanism that we have to understand is that we need the tools. We are not electing a pastor. And we wouldn't, as Father Frank stated, we wouldn't go to someone who's in the trades or elsewhere and ask them, what is your philosophical position on abortion? We would ask them, how are you going to do your job really well? And so I really appreciate that he's brought this up. I would also like to ask him something else that's kind of dividing and causing concern amongst American voters is on the issue of J.D. Vance, which is the vice presidential candidate alongside President Trump around a federal abortion ban. This is something that people are saying we really need it, but at the same time, people are saying this is a states' rights issue.
We actually may have a clip before you respond, Brother Frank. Can we take a look at that? Yeah,
friends tonight said to me, well, all these suburban women, all they care about is abortion, and they don't understand that decision is with the states now. It's not banned nationally, even if some people want it to be banned nationally. It's with the states. What do you say to suburban women out there who are marinating in this propaganda?
Well, first of all, I don't buy that, Laura. I think most suburban women care about the normal things that most Americans care about, right? They care about inflation. They care about the price of groceries. They care about public safety in the streets where their kids play. Look, as Donald Trump has said, he wants the American people at the state level to decide abortion policy. And you compare that to the Democrats who want to do nationalized, taxpayer-funded abortion up to the moment of birth. I think Donald Trump is actually trying to identify the reasonable compromise where he lets California figure out its abortion policy, Alabama and Ohio figure out their abortion policy. That is actually the common sense approach, and it's the approach that's most respectful of the American people. The Democrats are obsessed with late-term abortion and making sure taxpayers fund it. Obviously, Republicans disagree with that, but I think that Donald Trump has charted a very reasonable course for the American people. Let the American people decide this. The federal government, we're going to focus on securing that border and bringing down the cost of groceries and housing.
Yeah, Americans are basically unified on being against late-term abortion, but what are your thoughts on that, Brother Frank?
Well, first of all, ultimately, we have to have, obviously, a national recognition that the right to life, which is in our Declaration and Constitution, applies to the unborn. I mean, that's the ultimate goal we have to get to, actually, is a constitutional amendment, saying either clarifying that the 14th Amendment already protects the right to life or adding that protection explicitly. So, final goal. Where we are at the moment right now, we do not have either the public opinion or the political will in the Congress to pass a national, quote, national ban on abortion. We don't like to call it a ban. We like to call it protection of these babies, right? But see, and then this is again where when either Vance or Trump are asked about a national ban, the question is a little bit disconnected from reality, because the next Congress is not going to get a national ban on abortion to the president's desk. We know this because we know the political temperature in the Congress, among the candidates, among the members. We still have the filibuster in the Senate. It's not going to happen in the short term. In the long term, that's different. In the short term, it's not going to happen. So it's a question that is academic. It's not actually practically a question. What would make more sense is to ask President Trump, like Mateo, the things you referred to. You're going to reinstate Mexico City policy on your first day. You're going to enforce Title X so that money doesn't go to Planned Parenthood. You're going to get us back into the Geneva Consensus, which you're very familiar with too. This international alliance of pro-life nations. Are you going to reinstitute under HHS the division of conscience and religious freedom, which is it's an office that took hundreds and hundreds of complaints from citizens who felt like a nurse in Vermont who was being forced to perform an abortion, although she had indicated to the medical institute she worked for that she was against abortion and did not want to be involved. President Trump's administration actually intervened in that case. When Biden came into office, they dropped the case. So it's like, you ask President Trump what about the actual things that he's going to do. And none of those things that he did in his first term for pro-life has he ever said, that was a mistake, I'm not going to do it again. So when people say, oh, he's flip-flopping or he's backing away on abortion, that's the question I ask them. Well, which of his pro-life accomplishments has he repented of? None. He hasn't. I'm sorry I appointed hundreds of pro-life judges that are going to serve for life. Sorry, that was a mistake. He hasn't been saying that. So we've got to kind of tamper things down and say, wait a minute, this is a political campaign. Usually the campaigning sounds better than the governing, right? We all know that. They make promises that later they can't fulfill. In this case, I am totally confident that the governing on abortion is going to be better than what the campaigning sounds like.
Well, we have the benefit this time of actually having some history to see that actually is the case. The last time his governing was certainly better than his rhetoric on the subject, historically better than any other presidential candidate or one who sat in the office. Matea, now let me ask this question. Is there a difference, and should we be concerned with the campaign, which we know they have to move to the center? We know these things have to happen when you're in a campaign. You say certain things to bring in the majority of the vote for you. Is there a difference between the campaign's policies and the pillars of the platform itself? Is there any concern about what the platform is doing as well?
I do believe there are some concerns about the platform, because long after Trump is in and then out of office, what remains? The policies of the party remain. And so the policies, for myself, as someone who worked very intimately within the Conservative Party of Canada, I'm seeing the exact same playbook happening and unfolding. And it's very concerning to me, because after candidates who are very strong on conservative issues, like on the life issue, they come and go, the policies of the party have continually shifted more and more to the center and then farther past the center. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing on this matter. Now, with that being said, I am very encouraged that with regards to the 14th Amendment, that has still remained in the GOP policy book. However, I am concerned about other issues that have been removed, like the issue of adoption. Marriage definition is a huge one, but we're going back to the life issue. The Human Life Amendment has also been stripped from the GOP platform at this point in time. And that is very, very concerning to me. Again, like Father Frank is saying, that's more of a long-term march towards that end goal. However, I think that it's very important that we remain steadfast in policy, at least of the party policy, removing that from the campaign, and we stick to that. However, that's where my concern lay on that issue.
Yeah, the campaign platform or the party platform is never meant to win an election. The purpose of the party platform is to let the insiders know, here's what we believe down to our core. We're on your side. Here's where we are. And platforms do not make news, except for recently, whenever a party changes its platform so dramatically as the Republican Party has. Father Frank, do you see any concern with what the Republican Party platform has been doing? Are you say you're confident what Trump is going to do? Are you concerned with what the platform is doing?
Yeah, I was at the convention. I was at the RNC. In fact, I was leading prayer services every day that they asked me to lead. And we were talking about this. And I was talking with some of the delegates who were involved in hammering out the platform. They were concerned as well. But there wasn't really, in that process this year, for whatever reason, the opportunity for robust and substantial debate. I'm very confident that over the next 4 years, we can work with the people who will end up reshaping the platform 4 years from now. And we have to work right now on the mechanism of how the platform is hammered out. I think this year, it's safe to say it was hammered out under fire. And this has been the most unusual political cycle in American history. And I think that contributes to part of the reason why there wasn't the substantial amount of time for really substantive debate about what the platform should say about pro-life. Now, let's keep in mind, it says less about every issue. They drastically shortened that document. But it gets revised every 4 years. So we've got to be, it's good that we're talking about it. We've got to be hammering on it. But in the meantime, let's take what it does say. Some people are under the mistaken impression that the reference to pro-life and abortion was taken out of the platform completely. It wasn't. It doesn't appear in the initial 20 priorities that are on the first page of the platform, but it is there later on in the other 15 pages of the document. And it does, as Matea just said, mention the 14th Amendment. That's very significant, even though it then kind of drops off after that. And it's sort of a little bit inherently contradictory, because you can't say that the right to life is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, but then say, well, if the states want to take it away, they can. I mean, this has got to be this idea of the states can decide for themselves. It opens the door. It's a very good thing, because now 14 states protect the unborn from conception. Thank you, President Trump. And a whole bunch of others, like Florida, have moved earlier into the pregnancy to protect these babies. This is a temporary situation. To say that it's good that the states decide for themselves, this is only a temporary situation to be tolerated. One quick other point. The Constitution was drafted by our founders, and they had to deal with the issue of slavery in much the same way that we're wrestling with the issue of abortion. To remind people, many may be aware of this, but especially for those that aren't, there's a clause in the Constitution that says we're not going to take any federal action on slavery, they called it importation of persons, for 20 years. The founders actually said, because remember, they were trying to unite the slave states and the free states to adopt the same constitution. So they couldn't put in that constitution, hey, slavery is terrible, we're going to ban it nationally. They said, you know what? The states have their policies. We're going to take no federal action for 20 years. I feel like that's sort of like what President Trump and the Republicans are saying right now, Yeah. But they gave the nation the tool by which slavery was ultimately abolished. And it goes back to our discussion before that we are going to preserve the tools here that the Democrats are trying to destroy, the Constitution itself.
Wow, such a powerful point. What a tremendous parallel to what we're dealing with today. Ladies and gentlemen, again, in a moment, I'm going to be showing a clip of Jonathan Shuttlesworth, who had some interesting things to say about a tweet that I put out. I'm going to be responding to that. So before I let these two go, Matea, any final comments about what we've been discussing here?
Absolutely. Honestly, we have to engage with the political system as believers. There's no excuse for us not to. We're called to take ground. We're called to have dominion. We're called to dominate. And one of the pillars in society is the political sphere. And we have to be incredibly active. And as we're discussing this, we're talking about a lot of the mechanisms and even the GOP platform. Going to the ballot box is only one step in engagement in the political process. We need to be engaged on the local and state level. Yes, indeed. But we also need to be engaged with the party system, because after politicians, candidates come and go, what remains is the policy itself. I came into the political sphere very naive, didn't know what I was doing, and the Lord directed my steps. And we are where we are today, where I'm influencing policy directly. So there's no reason why any one of you, young, old, mother, father, lawyer, doesn't matter your position in your spheres of influence in this world. We all have a part to play and something to contribute, because we're children of God, and we come with a different level of authority and power and insight, and therefore we must be engaged in these processes.
Wow. Pastor Frank, any final thoughts? And be sure to let our audience know how they can connect with you.
Yes, prolifevote.com is our election website. I want to invite folks to connect with us there. Pro-Life Vote. And also stateballotmeasures.org on these 10 states that have these constitutional amendment battles over abortion, stateballotmeasures.org. I just want to say to everybody, be encouraged. We all have our role to play. God is going to bless our efforts. I'm confident we're going to save this country, because that's really what this boils down to. And let's just be patient. Let's be wise. We have to hold on to two things at once: uncompromising pro-life principles, and we've articulated those here, and strong, informed political savvy. We have to understand how politics and legislation works. Some people are strong with political savvy, but they're so savvy that they sacrifice principles. Others are so focused on principles, but they don't know too much about how you translate those principles into public policy. Please, everybody, let's strive every day to be strong in both of those pillars at the same time, because that's the only way we win. And that's the only way we save our country and ultimately save the unborn.
Wow, that's exactly what we're about to dive into, actually, in detail, that we need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Frank Pavone, Matea Murta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We're going to get into the controversial part of this conversation. Jonathan Shuttlesworth had a few things to say about a recent tweet. And let me read. Can I read the tweet first, Evan? Yeah. And by the way, I don't know where you've been getting your coffee. You need to get it from EncounterCoffee.com. EncounterCoffee.com. The Wigglesworth blend is our most popular blend. Stop getting your coffee from woke companies. Go to EncounterCoffee.com.
Cancel culture.
Cancel culture with a Holy Ghost-filled cup of brew. Hot coffee. Azusa Street Mornings, and there's some information about Wigglesworth on the back and on William Seymour on the other Azusa Street Mornings. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great gift, especially for the holidays coming up. So get your coffee, ground or whole bean, EncounterCoffee.com. Now, let's take a look, and then we'll get to some of your questions, because I think this is important. Jonathan Shuttlesworth recently read a tweet that I had written on his program and had some criticism for it. And by the way, let me start off by saying Jonathan Shuttlesworth's ministry is amazing. And I'm going to tell all of you, I'm going to put a link in the description of this video. There is something happening in that ministry right now. The Holy Ghost is moving so powerfully and so strong. I encourage all of you to sow into it. So we're going to put a link in the description for you to sow into his ministry. And then you can come back, pause this, go do that, then come back and take a look at this. But here's the tweet that I wrote. It's a perfect tweet. It's a perfect tweet. Here's what I was actually talking about. There is a post on Encounter News on X. If you're not following Encounter News on X, you need to. By NBC News, the Republican platform no longer calls for a federal abortion ban, things we discussed previously, and no longer defines marriage between a man and a woman. Is this a sign your father, Donald Trump, is moving to the center? Now, here is my response to that news article. And then I'll let Jonathan Shuttlesworth kind of give his response, and then we'll talk about it together. The problem is that if the Republican Party secures a victory in November, they'll mistakenly believe it's due to a shift towards the center. In reality, this won't be the case, but they'll attribute their success to it, and this will provide the uniparty, the swamp, the uniparty establishment with an opportunity to seize control of Trump's Republican Party. Essentially, it will be the case of meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I'll give you a little more information about what I meant by that after we take a look at this clip. Let's see what Brother Jonathan Shuttlesworth has to say.
The problem is that if the Republican Party secures a victory in November, they'll mistakenly believe, here's a pastor in North Carolina, not a bad guy. So I want to address this from the proper standpoint, which is my standpoint. The problem is that if the Republican Party secures a victory in November, they'll mistakenly believe it's due to a shift toward the center. In reality, this won't be the case, but they'll attribute their success to it, and this will provide the uniparty establishment with an opportunity to seize control of Trump's Republican Party. Essentially, it will be a case of meet the new boss, same as the old boss. So this is on NBC News. The interviewer asks Eric Trump, the Republican platform no longer calls for a federal abortion ban and no longer defines marriage between one man and one woman. Is this a sign your father, Donald Trump, is moving to the center? Before we play that, I want to tell you why most pastors and conservatives and Christian leaders are absolute morons when it comes to politics.
Listen to this.
Trump's up 4 points in the polls, okay? The only thing the Democrats have to get any traction is that if the Republicans are in charge, they're going to shred all your freedoms, right? That's all they have to say. So do you think this would be a good time to give them credibility by talking about a federal abortion ban and taking shots at gay people and whatever else?
Now, Paul,
just
for
because
a second,
they're down.
Just for a second. I want you to listen to what he's saying, because what he's saying is actually 100% true. The only problem is we're talking about two different things. We're not talking about the same thing. He's talking about the campaign, and he's talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about the Republican Party and their platform. We're talking about two different things. He's talking about right now in the campaign. I'm talking about a year from now. Two different things. I'll explain that in a little more detail as we continue on.
Playing that right now doesn't mean that they're moving to the center or whatever. Secondly, if Pastor, and I like this guy, Pastor Allen.
I like
He's
him
in North
more.
Carolina. But what would he have to say to they'll move to the center? Move to the center? We just moved away from the center. Who did we have before? Mitt Romney?
Yeah, that's right.
What's the guy's Paul something?
McCain.
The huge, the same
Paul
nose as
Ryan,
Rocky
yeah, remember Paul
Marciano.
Ryan.
The guy from Wisconsin, can't remember his name. and all those Bush, Cheney, Liz Cheney, all those type of people, all the neocons, John McCain, we just moved away from. What are you talking about moving? As if the Republicans were some bastion of conservative principles that all of a sudden now are moving to the center. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know,
And
because
secondly, whether it's
he doesn't know what I'm talking about. He's talking about something entirely different, and I agree with him 100%. I'm referring to the future of the Republican Party a year from now. He's talking about the campaign now. Let's make sure we get all of it before.
Agenda 25, which is a stupid thing to introduce right now. Oh, I know what we should do. Let's make a big list of scary things we're going to propose that are scary to people on the left and the center left. Just lay off of it like they're doing. Trump's making the right call here.
Agreed.
And furthermore, who got abortion? Whose administration got abortion overturned at the federal level? Trump did. So I don't care. So what would you rather have? All these people, Pastor Allen, however you pronounce his last name, Didio.
That'll work.
And other people. What would you rather have? Would you rather have somebody that talks real tough on abortion and does nothing, which we had for 50 years? Or somebody that has the political sense as they're gaining ground with moderates to lay off of things that are going to scare moderates away? Can't you ever heard of posturing? Not a bright position. And then I think Eric Trump played it well too. Roll it.
The Republican platform, interestingly, has moved to the center on a couple of key issues. For the first time in 40 years, the Republican platform does not call for a federal abortion ban. It no longer defines marriage as between one man and one woman, but it doesn't. So is this a sign that your father is moving to the center in some ways or on some issues?
Yes, I think he's always been there on those issues, to tell you the truth. And I think that's reflective of who my father is and what he believes in. And I think that's reflective of my wife, Laura, who runs the RNC, and clearly what she believes in. And I'm proud of the party. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, this country has real holes in the roof, and you've got to fix those holes, and you've got to stop worrying about the little, spot on the wall in the basement. You've got to fix those holes, and we've got real immigration problems.
I'm telling you, me as a spirit-filled pastor, if I was the Republican nominee right now, I would not be talking federal abortion ban, and let's take this nation for Christ. That's not how you run a political campaign. That's a good way to get about 26% of the vote. Is scare the crap out of everybody that's not a Christian.
He's
How can you not
absolutely
see that?
right. The only problem is he's talking about the wrong thing. We're talking about two different things. He's focusing on the campaign and winning the election. I'm focused on the platform and what's going to happen in the future. So I want to talk a little bit about this because I think this is a big problem within the conservative movement right now. Now, my experience within politics dates back probably as extensively as Jonathan Shuttlesworth's experience. In the 2020 election, the 2024 election, I was actually heavily involved. I was on the street knocking on doors and making phone calls, working with certain political parties. And I was 2004.
2004, got it.
2000 and 2004. And particularly in 2004, I was a part of a campaign that actually brought George W. Bush the victory in Ohio when Ohio was the swing state. And one of the things that I noticed, and so it's been an extensive, more than 2 decades of being heavily involved in this, I've noticed that we get pigeonholed in the prison of two ideas, and we become fearful that if we say anything negative about a candidate, that is going to harm their chances of winning. And again, in this post that I made on X, I was actually not referring to the candidate, Donald Trump, or his position. I'm referring to the party and its platform. But we get in this prison of two ideas where we feel like, well, we can't say anything negative, because if we do, they're not going to win the election. And then the greater of two evils is going to get into office. And so let's just not say anything. We're not going to hold anybody accountable. We're not going to have any proposals or policy positions that we're going to recommend to the party. We're not going to hold their feet to the fire. We'll just wait until after they're elected. And then after they're elected, we'll make sure we hold them accountable. And what happens is after they're elected, the next campaign starts 24 hours later. And now we can't say anything negative about them because we're going to cause them to not get elected again. And so this churning of this cycle is what has produced the swamp or the uniparty, where there is this swamp, there is this deep state that wants to get its icy tentacles in whoever wins. They honestly don't care who wins. And so as a result, we have presidents who get in and they'll do some sort of executive order that makes the pro-lifers happy, or they'll do an executive order that makes the pro-abortionists happy. And then what happens, the next president gets in, makes an executive order to wipe that out, and around and around and around we go. And no real proposals are ever actually submitted that is legislated or becomes law. And as a result of that, it's just again and again and again, nothing ever gets fixed. So actually, I have said when Trump was running in 2016, I actually said this, I don't care. I've been pleading, even in this season, with ministers. It doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter if he's the most pro-abortion candidate on paper. He is the most pro-life candidate in American history. All of that is true. All of that's true. I do not slight Donald Trump from moving to the center. That is a campaign tactic. Not only do I not have a problem with it, I would recommend it. But that's not what I'm talking about. Some preacher somewhere has got to stop being the Republican Party's campaign manager and focused only on getting them to win. Somebody has to hold them accountable, has to look behind the scenes, has to see what's going on, hold their feet to the fire and say, hey, I don't know that I like this. I think we need to think twice about this. Instead of being fearful that if I say anything, yes, sir, whatever they say, I'm good for so that they can get elected, somebody's got to do something about this. And so, yes, he's correct. If all I want to do is be a campaign manager for the Trump administration, if that's all I want to do, like most preachers today, and they've drunken the Trump Kool-Aid so they can never say anything negative about him because they're scared that if they say anything negative, that they're going to hinder his chances to win. Listen, I'm not the campaign manager of the Trump campaign. I'm a gospel preacher. Therefore, I call balls and strikes. When it's good, I say it's good. When it's bad, I say it's bad. And that's just the way it's going to be. And so I don't have a problem with being wise and making sure that we're supporting our candidate. But as far as the platform is concerned, the platform is not written as a campaign initiative to win votes. The party platform is written solely to let the insiders know what we really stand for and what we're going to push for. And the Republican Party's platform is drifting away from conservative values, like traditional marriage or pro-life. It's drifting away from that. And mark my word, what is going to happen is that a year from now, 2 years from now, when we get into the next election, 3 years from now, when we get into the next election, whether it be the midterms or the next presidential election, the uniparty is going to whisper in the ears of every Republican and say, look how well we did, if we do well. Look how well we did in the last election. That's because you moved to the center. So let's move further to the center, which of course will be to the left. So that's what I'm addressing. I'm addressing the future. So I don't mind if preachers want to be the campaign manager of a political party. And I don't mind if all they want to look at is the next 2 months. If that's as far as your vision can go, the next 2 months, then let your vision go 2 months. Somebody somewhere has got to think a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And here's what I believe. That I can think a year down the road and I can be critical of the Republican Party without being fearful of losing the election. I think if the moment we get trapped in that ideology, we've already lost, even if they get into office. So that's my position. I actually agree 100%. And when he was running in 2016, I told preachers not only would he be the most pro-life president in action, don't pay attention to his rhetoric, I said, I don't care. And I was saying this just as an extreme comment. So please know that I didn't mean it 100%, though there's a kernel of truth in this. I don't care if he allows abortions in the White House. If he does what he says he's going to do on the border and shut down illegal immigration, that's actually what really matters, because if we don't shut that down, if we don't get the immigration issue fixed, that is the most morally important issue of our day, immigration. I believe that's the most one, because it doesn't matter what you believe about abortion, doesn't matter what you believe about pro-life. If we don't get the immigration situation locked down, then no conservative will win any election for the next 20 years once there's a path to citizenship for these people. So there are issues that are far more important, and I get it. I get the nuance. I get that it's important. But don't lump me in with the people who are just have no foresight and no thought whatsoever about how their comments will affect an election or whether or not they're going to support the president. I'm 100% behind President Trump's campaign. I believe he will be has been and will continue to be the most pro-life president in history, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what's to come in the future. And somebody's got to hold the Republican Party's feet to the fire. If we do not, it will progressively go further and further. We will go back to the Bushes. If you enjoyed that time that you mentioned where we had Cheney and we had Bush and we had Paul Ryan, if you enjoyed that, this is how we got there. This is exactly how we got there. Don't criticize them now because we got to win this election. Oh, if we say anything, oh no, they're not gonna win. Oh no. I mean, that's how you get the Bushes and the Cheneys. That's how you get it. So keep on and on. Or we could get a little more nuanced. Allow ourselves to think a little more deeply, a little more long-term about these issues. And I think that'll get us much further along. Again, as gospel preachers, we are not campaign boosters. We call balls and strikes. When they get it right, we say so. When they get it wrong, we say so. And I think there'll be far more benefit that comes from that than from getting pitted into the partisan politics of our day and the team sports. The Antichrist spirit is a political spirit, and it will captivate and capture and manipulate anyone who allows themselves to be deceived by it. And it's been operating a lot longer than us. So let's be like Samuel. Let's say the left is wrong and the right is wrong, and let's call America back to repentance. And let's not be so focused on the election when it comes to making these kinds of decrees. Now, when it comes to planning, encouraging people to vote, educating our voters, all that kind of stuff, having the nuanced conversation like we've had in this program, do it. Do it. Tell people as I have, yeah, he's moving to the center. There's nothing wrong with him moving to the center. He is the most pro-life president in American history. And so, yes, let's have that conversation. But let's not forget to have the other conversation, that there is a uniparty, there is a swamp that seeks to get its icy tentacles in whoever wins and pull them in their direction. And the only way we can guard against that is making sure that we're not so scared of losing an election that we can't tell Republicans shape up or ship out. If you want our support, shape up. We have to place demands. I don't know if you've read Trump's The Art of the Deal. You got to place demands on these people, or they're going to ignore you. We are, as Christians, the largest special interest group. If we all stood together and say, hey, you do whatever you want to do in your political game, on your campaign, you say whatever you want to say. But here, Republican Party, here's what the platform needs to look like. They'll listen if we all sit together. But as long as we're fearful and they've got us cowering because we don't want to lose an election, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to go back to the Bush days, which is that's how we got there. Questions as they're coming in. I'm sure Evan has a few questions.
Yeah, let's see. Patty Ball said, would you do a stream on your teaching regarding immigration?
Yeah, we did I believe that's the most important political issue of our day. We did entire teaching on that. So I think you could probably search immigration on our YouTube channel and check that out. But I think we should do another broadcast about that leading into the election because we've got to get this under control. By the way, Jonathan Shuttlesworth's ministry is outstanding, and he's on fire. He's a prophetic voice of this generation. And so we need to pay attention to the things he has to say. You need to watch him go through current events and hear his perspective.
Yeah. They're so good at that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. The quality of what he's doing is outstanding. And actually, I think we agree 100%. It's just that sarcasm is my love language. And so which is why I wasn't at all offended. Actually, was very blessed. He was very gracious, very kind. And when I'm mimicking like Trump people cowering, I'm in fear because they don't want to get elected. I'm not referring to Jonathan Shuttlesworth. I'm referring to, as he kind of lumped me in with some of these other preachers, I was referring to that other crowd that's locked in the partisan political debate to the point that they can't say anything negative at all. And so much so that we're going to sow into his ministry in this season right now, and we encourage all of you to do it. Links in the description for Jonathan Shuttlesworth Ministry. They're just given a building recently, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And it's outstanding. So if you want to sow into what God is doing right now, it really is supernatural what's happening there. And I think we would all do well to partner with it and stand with it. And again, I think we're both agreeing 100%. I agree with what he's saying about the campaign. I don't know if he agrees because I was thinking about something a year down the road. That's what my comment was about in my perfectly worded tweet. Perfectly worded tweet. Yeah, just like Trump's perfect call. Perfectly worded. Go ahead, Ed.
Fun comment from One Body in Christ, which, by the way, he was on the Zoom the other week when we did the Zoom meeting with the Revival Nation people.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was great. So he said, if we were raptured before the election, who do you think would win the election?
Well, that's probably a self-answering question.
So no one would win the...
Well, of course, Kamala would win the election.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Let's see. Some people are thinking that you're being neutral in saying what you're saying. Are you being neutral, or are you choosing a different side? What does that mean?
I don't even know what the question is.
So, like, let me see if I can find the comment. Let's see.
Robert Grimshaw, stop trying to be neutral. What is the Holy Spirit saying? The Holy Spirit is saying to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Pay attention to what Jonathan Shuttlesworth said concerning the current campaign. That's really important. We don't want to be single-issue voters and get so discouraged when someone says something that we don't halfway like. We need this candidate to get into office, but at the same time, we need to let the Republican Party know that we're watching you. And we don't like some of the things we're seeing, and if you want our support, you better get this right.
We don't worship the Republican Party.
No, I don't support politicians. I use them. I don't see politicians as something that I'm supposed to support. I see a politician as something that I'm supposed to use. They are tools, and we must select the politician that is going to help us advance the gospel. Which one is more pro-free speech? Kamala just came out and said that she was for censoring on social media. Which politician is going to help us bring life? Trump, obviously. And so these issues are very clearly answered, but we need to make sure that the Republican Party understands where we stand and what we're looking for.
Flame of the Spirit says you should do a teaching relating to race relations as well. That's definitely going to be a heavily discussed topic.
I don't know if we could handle that conversation as an audience. I don't know if the world could handle that. We would have to have an uncensored conversation and bring in some amazing guests and friends to have that, because I have a lot to say about that, and I think race is used as a cudgel in order to divide us. And I think we need to have it. So thank you for letting us know. We will certainly do that. How many of you would like us to do more live streams like this in the afternoon or in the morning during the week, talking about end-time news that matters to you? Of course, we're having this conversation every single day at encounternews.com. If you go to encounternews.com, every day you're going to find new articles on there to encourage your faith, to build up your knowledge base so that you can give an answer for the hope that lies within you. Encounternews.com, stay informed not only on what's happening in the political campaign world, but what kind of end-time signs are being fulfilled. What about aliens and UFOs, artificial intelligence? We cover it all at encounternews.com. And if you're not already following Encounter News on X or on Instagram, make sure you do that. We're probably on Facebook as well. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at comments. Robert's got all kinds of great thoughts that he's throwing out there that we will have to address in the future. Also, don't forget to go to encountercoffee.com. Help us support the persecuted church around the world, to be a blessing to them. And we do that through you buying coffee. Encountercoffee.com. You can get the Wigglesworth Blend or Azusa Street Mornings. Plus, we've got some amazing resources at our store: Summoning the Demon, AI, Aliens, and the Antichrist, Armed for Victory, about spiritual warfare, and Encounter, the Ephesian Mandate. All kinds of resources for you. Go to encountertoday.com to get more information, and be sure to share this with all the intercessors you know. Yes, sir, Mr. Evans.
Another really cool thing, I'm about to play a video from a conference we just did teaching Christians how to use media to advance the gospel in a better way. So what we're going to do is we're going to make those sessions available here soon, and we're going to do another conference, a virtual conference, with a free ticket and a special ticket with some behind-the-scenes stuff we're going to be doing. But there's a free option, so it's going to be called Amplify, and we're going to be going deep into this. So if you're a Christian and you really want to make a difference using media, then this is where you have to be. Pastor, do you have anything you want to add before I play that video?
I think the link is in the description, possibly, but you can definitely go to armedmedia.org. Again, there is a free ticket option if you'd like to be a part of that. If you'd like to get the videos from our last Armed Media conference, then there's a paid ticket option, and you get access to all of those videos, as well as some additional cool stuff. So you can check that out at that website. But let's take a look, and we'll see you guys next time.
You have to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit. And when he tells you to do something, do it. When he tells you to hit record and stop thinking about the lighting and the audio. When he gives you a message, share it.
And so we got too many Christians that are diagnosing what the world's doing, but not talking about how the kingdom should be coming into the world and descending in. So if your YouTube channel or your social media channels were a physical place, would it be different than the environment that they're in?
You know what's making inroads? You know what's making impact? The crazy, tongue-talking, spirit-filled, Jesus-loving, Bible-based believers. That's where the power is.
The good thing is, if you're starting from scratch, you can get discovered. It takes learning how, but it's not only just possible, it's happening every single day.
Everything's going to change. Everything you think you know is going to change. So whatever you think you know, nobody cares. It's time to adapt. It's time to change. It's time to change direction.
The amount of pastors and leaders in churches that I've seen, they feel like, oh, to reach this next generation, we need to be like the next generation. We can see through manufactured shows and presentations right away.
The best time to ask somebody to subscribe to your channel is after you've actually given them real value.
Leverage the platform, leverage the algorithm, lean into it, but don't let it control you. The main thing is to ultimately know God and make him known, and YouTube should just be an extension of that.
One of the great things about failing fast is it shows you what's wrong fast. See, if you are hesitant and you fail slow, it takes you a long time to figure out it doesn't work. So if Pastor Allen has another conference, don't be like John Maxwell. Keep coming by yourself. Get your team. But see, here's the difference. When I left, I had to go then explain it to my staff. If I'd taken my staff, we'd have come together and left as a team.